Welcome to the leadership webinar. We would be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this webinar. It's a very exciting day. I see more than 413 registrations coming from 14 plus countries. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, 9 critical skills for high performance leader, brought to you by Quint, Tal Success, and the Pontifract Group. Before we start, a quick set of logistics. One is on the questions. While we do the session, there'll be a lot of questions that you might have. There is a question panel on the right side. If you have any question or query, please put it on the question pane. One of us would respond to that either during the webinar or towards the end of the webinar when we have dedicated question and answer time. You would all be on a listen only mode in the webinar. So you will not be able to unmute and ask a question or have a query. So you will probably have to use the question panel for any question and a chat panel if you have any specific issues related to the program. If you see immediately after the poll that you're not able to listen or your slides are frozen, probably you might have to log out and log in again, because sometimes this happens immediately after the poll. But in all circumstances, it should run pretty smooth for you. This webinar is also getting recorded, and we will share the link with you probably within a few days of the webinar. So you don't need to worry about the slides and the session and the exciting stuff that we cover today. With that, let me go in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for the people joining in across the globe for this webinar. Let me quickly introduce what's going to happen during the session. Let me do some context setting. This is me. My name is Sunil Mehta. I look after the business of Quint in India, Middle East, and Africa. I'm also one of the founding members of Quint India. And I, on behalf of my entire team, would like to welcome you on this webinar. We will also be joining by my colleague Pankaj Kejriwal. He would come and do the word of thanks towards the end. And he is the Chief Strategy Officer for Tal Success, another brand of Quint, and we'll talk about it. I'll also like to thank the entire team which worked on the background to make this happen, to make this a global launch webinar for the leadership programs that we bring to you. The entire marketing team of Neha, supported by Manmohan, Ravi, the entire business development team of Amit and Pompey, Samir, yeah, the entire team. So, about 40 people who worked on this. But thank you so much to bring in this together. And the reason why we are here is because of this gentleman, Dan Pontifract, an amazing personality, an amazing person, Yeah, I'm an amazing leader and an amazing author. He's written about 4 books. And in my career, which started in 1990, there are very, very few people I really admire, and follow. And Dan is really one of them because of the person he is. And you'll see the kind of energy he brings in, the amount of clarity he brings in, the amount of transparency he brings in the entire leadership spectrum. And we are very honored and happy that he himself could be part of this discussion despite his busy schedule and pretty late in Canada as of now. So he's joining us live from Canada in a moment. But let me quickly also give you a context of Quint and Tal Success. A lot of you know us, but just to give you a journey, we started in 1992. So we are celebrating 30 years this year in Amsterdam. And then we quickly opened up multiple offices. India consulting office opened up in 2004. So we've been doing training consulting on the best practice area since then. But as we moved, the best practices was not good enough or not just enough to really solve the issues of the organization. So came in the technology part, right? So the best practice needs to automate using tools. So technology came in, and that's when we bought over a few companies like Paphos, and then data and data science and digital transformation came in, and we also acquired a few other organizations like Anchorman, and also a gamification organization called Gaming Works. And in 2013 we had launched a brand of Quint called Quint Colors, and that was to focus on the people aspect. And we realized when we were doing training and especially implementation of best practices, whether it was ITIL or COBIT or TOGAF or governance or anything, from the process point of view it really worked pretty good, but from the people point of view we really had challenges to get people together and to get them excited to do this new journey. And we really were not able to show the impact that we initially set out to show to the organization. So we really, looked at behavioral training, cognitive training, little bit on the emotional side, management of change, team building, building trust, yeah, leadership skills, and so on and so forth. So that was our first strength with the people side. But we were typically working with IT organizations at that point in time, mostly our existing accounts. But now in 2021, we are relaunching Quint Colors. We had almost about 100 plus module of our own, but we are now augmenting with 6 more global brands to make it really international and really powerful. Now we are looking at launching it as Tal Success. It's a new brand of Quint, but basically it focuses mostly on the people side. And let me quickly take you through what Tal Success is. It's a brand of Quint Consulting. Yeah, we kind of bring in our 17 years of experience in India and Middle East and Africa working, and also the global experience, and now trying to create very, very specific modules which will help organization reach the business success, as we call it, right? And these are the 6 brands that we've tied up. So from 100 modules, now we are close to about 240 modules. Just to give you an idea, Omnia is focused mostly on the behavioral side of the people side, which is more to do with the assertiveness, the need for structure, communication, the pace and agility from individual perspective, right from recruiting the people to putting them in a particular role. How does they fit in? Talent Smart is looking at very specific and unique EQ, the emotional intelligence side, and that's caught up in the last 2 to 3 years, in a big way in terms of managing self and managing others. And all of these are required basically from the leadership development point of view. You really, everybody is a born leader, but you need to inculcate those really the leadership skills as we move up in the ladder in the corporate world. With Pontifract Group, we are endorsing a huge set of leadership skills, the programs, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But putting all the behavioral side, the cognitive side, the emotional side together to make sure that you become a good leader, and that's what we are trying to do with the Pontifract Group. Richardson is bringing more the business side, the sales side on the table, and Fierce is a very unique combination. Fierce teaches us the art of conversation, right? It's an art we've forgotten, but it's required in each and every aspect of what we do. how to really do a conversation. And it could be a simple conversation, it could be a tricky conversation, it could be a a dispute that you want to discuss, it could be a very heavy negotiation that you want to the whole structure and the process of negotiation or the art of conversation is what we bring on the table with Spheres. And to put all of it together to calculate the impact that we've been able to create, either of a project or an innovation or a program or even a leadership skills program that we're running across the organization from a training academy point of view, what is the impact and ROI that is created for the business is something that ROI brings methodology around, and putting it all together is very, very critical for us. So this is what we are bringing in a very brief in terms of TAL success. And from a leadership point of view, we talked about leading self, we talked about leading teams, and obviously leading organization. And that's what we are talking today, from a high performance leadership perspective. Just to give you an idea of what we were doing earlier, these were just some of our very popular, I would say, best practices courses that we've been doing for the last 30 years. But the missing link was the people side, because you might have the right certification, but if you do not have the right skills to communicate, to kind of work with people, to motivate people, to do the delivery of trust with the people, it becomes very difficult. And that is what we try to do with the TAL success portion. So with this, I like to come back to Dan. I think the reason why we are here and the excitement that we bring on the table. As you see, he's written 4 books. He's on a journey to write his 5th book. And one of the flagship programs that we bring on the table and we talk today is coming from directly from his book, which is the Lead, Care, and Win book, which is, create a leader who matter, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. What are the typical 9 skills that you need to become an effective leader, to become a high performance leader? But before I hand over to Dan, I like to also do a quick poll while the transfer goes to Dan in terms of who we are today. As I said, we are a diverse group of people, more than 400 people joining from various parts of the world. So before Dan starts talking from the leadership point of view, I just want to support him. Which role, which department do you represent within your organization? If you can quickly, in a very agile way, put in one of the buttons, then he would know what perspective to talk about and focus on. And I'm happy we are about 20% voted. So be pretty agile, guys. We just need a minute for this. If you can quickly put in, check one of the boxes. Okay, we see 50% people, great. More than 200 people have responded. That's excellent. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds. Okay, now we can have the results, please. Okay, excellent. So we see 50% of the people today are from the delivery and the operations side. Okay, so that's, I think, the real engine which makes the organization run. So excellent, 50% people. 16% people are from HR, L&D in talent, because I think that's the team which creates programs for a specific objective, and if that objective is achieved, then you have a good success. So excellent, thank you. 10% people are from sales and business development, and 10% people are from business management, which is the business people. Also, as I said, all of us are leaders. They are leaders in each and every segment, and there are about 13% people which are others. So 50% delivery operations, 16% HR, L&D, talent development people, 10% sales, 10% business. All right. Okay, so with that, I would like to hand it over to Dan and have him take it away. And thank you, Dan, for joining in late. Over to you. Okay, Dan, we can't hear you.
There, how's that? Oh,
Perfect.
battery change. Good way to start, eh? Just 1 second.
Okay, you'll also notice, I'm sure you would have attended a lot of webinars, live webinars. I think Dan has a very unique way to present. He doesn't show slides, he really presents them in a video form. So I think that would be a good experience to have. It's another innovative way to bring the message across. It's a little difficult to be live 100%, Dan, but excellent. Thank you, Dan. Okay, over to you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Batteries ran out. Who knew that would happen? But what I was saying, Sunil, was it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be in partnership with you, the TAL Success, and the Quint team. I am here based in the west coast of Canada, Victoria, British Columbia, and I'm delighted to be here. But I'll say this to some of my colleagues, some of my friends, some of you I may not know yet. In India specifically, I've got my eye on you because I've been watching the Olympics and I'm pretty happy for you, Mr. Chopra. I mean, wow, that was amazing. So your first track and field gold medal ever. So those of you based in India, congratulations. I hope you're feeling as proud as I am for you, which leads me to the point of what we're here to talk about today, actually, which is another story for those of you in the UK, if you're up right now, and that is Sam Poynton. Sam Poynton is a 6-year-old kid who wrote to the National Railway Museum based in York, England. And he wrote this letter as a 6-year-old because he found out that the National Railway Museum was looking for a new director. And as a 6-year-old, he applied to be the new director of the National Railway Museum. So this is a letter. It says, "Dear Mr. Tucker, application for director." Says, "I'm writing to apply to be the new director of the National Railway Museum. I am only 6, but I know I can do this job. I have an electric train track. I am good at my train track, and I can control 2 trains at once." Now, if that's not beautiful, which it is, think about the National Railway Board of Directors. You've got this kid, this application from a 6-year-old to become the new director. What do? Do you throw it into the bin and you say, forget it? That's it? You know what? We don't care? Or do you have a think and do you say to yourself, maybe we should make him the director of fun? And they did. They made Sam the director of fun. And Sam, after a week on the job, he said, "It's the best job in the world. I love it. It's good fun." And it's such a great story for me to start out with because it brings up the question about you. Yeah. Do you care about your leadership style? Do you care? Now, what brings me here to talk to you? What qualifies me to talk to you about leadership? Well, as it turns out, I spent the last 25 years in very large organizations such as SAP, such as Canadian-based telecoms TELUS, as an executive, chief envisioner, chief learning officer. My job was to help both our leaders, our team members, and customers become better people. That was my job. It was pretty cool. And then when I left TELUS, I got to work with a whole bunch of other companies in which to do so. And then I started writing books, as Sunil alluded to, which has been fun. So I've basically been observing you, the human being, for the better part of the last 25 years. And here's one of my observations. I've got a few, and we'll get into them today, but here's one. We are lazy. Now, this is hard to see, but this is like a road, and this is a big like tree that went into the road, but then the guy or the gal who was painting the road, they said, well, I'm just gonna go around it. And sometimes I wonder if we're way too lazy with our leadership styles. Do we care enough? That's the big question today. And I want you to remember this as we start through some of the journey today. You are not in the people business. You're actually in the relationship business. When you believe in relationships, when you believe that you care about the people in which you lead, you will win, period. Now, if for whatever reason you're from New Zealand today, you know this individual. It's Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Now, when the pandemic hit New Zealand in March of 2020, it seems like forever ago, Jacinda Ardern was thinking about the children of New Zealand. And she held a press conference thinking about the children of New Zealand. Because why? She cared. In that press conference, she said basically this: "Dear children of New Zealand, I know you're worried. I know we're in lockdown. But I want you to know that I've had a conversation with the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy traditions in New Zealand. And even though we're under lockdown, I have given special orders to both the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy to come into your home, to collect your teeth, leave some money, and to leave you some Easter eggs and chocolates." That is what I'm up to today. It's about how we care about others in our leadership. I'll give you another story from my new hometown here in Canada, Victoria. In Victoria, we have something called the British Columbia Pensions Corporation. They look after sort of like your retirement savings for many people out here. And so what ultimately happened was Robert Bonas, like Jacinda Ardern, looked at his team when the pandemic hit, again, March 2020, and his team was about 15 people. I mean, it wasn't a country of children, but nonetheless, he took a look as a director of operation at his team of 15. And he said, "Oh my gosh, you know what? No one has ever worked from home before. This is what I'm going to do." Robert went to sort of a rental car place, rented a truck, like a van. And from there, he went back into the office where the headquarters of BC Pension Corp is. And he collected all the ergonomic chairs, the double monitors, the mugs, all the accoutrements around people's desks. He sanitized everything. He drove it in that rented van to their homes, to their condos, to their wherever they lived. He phoned them up and he said, "Look, I've been thinking about you. I just want you to have the stuff that makes you comfortable while you work from home. I don't know what this pandemic thing is, but it might be a while." That is what I'm getting at. And so today, what I'd like to do is to take you through, as Sunil alluded to, these 9 leadership lessons about performance, about leadership, and ultimately about care. Now, it's not all about hugs. This is not about just hugging people and saying, "I hope you're okay." What this is about when I say care are the pure kind of strategic leadership and caring type of behaviors that I want you to think about. And particularly as we're still in a pandemic, and particularly as we think about what life is going to be like after the pandemic, all of us need to do a better job of how we lead others. So let me start with the first one. The first lesson is called Be Relatable. Now, just before the pandemic hit, in the United Kingdom, Kentucky Fried Chicken, so it's a fast food chain. I know that some of you have been to them. About 215 of their stores, their shops, their restaurants, well, guess what? They ran out of chicken, like for about 10 days. And Kentucky Fried Chicken without chicken, well, what do? So it's kind of a big deal, right? But how do you relate to your employees and your customers? Well, as leaders, the senior leaders, what did they do? They decided to take out full-page advertisements online and in newspapers across the United Kingdom, and they rearranged the letters of KFC to maybe be a swear word, like FCK. And in that ad, they said, "We're sorry, a chicken restaurant without any chicken, well, it's not ideal." I mean, that's being relatable. What does relatable mean at the end of the day? Well, of the first of 9 lessons, it's that you can say sorry and that you admit mistakes. Start there. As leaders, we are not infallible. We make mistakes. Ergo, we should say sorry about it. Secondly, yeah, we should really ask for help. There is nothing wrong with a leader who says, hey, I don't know. I don't understand. Could you help me? Thirdly, when leaders can empathize, when they feel what others are feeling, what they think, what others are thinking on their team, they are in a better position to relate to that person. So when we empathize, we're actually being relatable. And number 4 is when we make a connection with our team, when we know what their likes are, their dislikes, maybe the names of their children. Do they like tennis or auto racing or cricket? Whatever the case may be, can you make a connection so it's not just a transactional relationship about work? Being relatable is being a human being, like Jacinda Ardern, like Robert Bonas. I'll give you an example in the United States. Now, there was a basketball coach who was a basketball coach for about 30 years at the University of North Carolina. His name was Dean Smith. And sadly, he passed away. I guess we all do, but in this case, he did. It was big news because he was a very famous basketball coach. If you don't know Dean Smith, well, you might have heard of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was one of his students, if you will, basketball players when Michael Jordan went to university. Now, when Dean Smith passed away, he actually instructed his lawyer to send a letter to every basketball player he coached. And in the letter contained a $200 check. And in the letter with the check, it wrote basically, Coach Smith was thinking about you. He wants you to go out for dinner on him. That is being relatable even when you've passed away. Number 2 is called play for meaning. Now, here's a shot of some men who looks like they're cleaning up a flood. And as it turns out, they are. And I'll bring some Canada into the talk today because these are members of the men's national rugby team for Canada. Now, when the men's rugby World Cup was being held in Japan 2 years ago, prior to the pandemic, the Canadians, they got beat like badly in games 1 and 2 in the group stage. They were very excited for game number 3 because they thought they might actually get a win. And instead, Mother Nature had ideas, and Mother Nature rained down a tsunami of rain. It was a typhoon, and it washed out the pitch. So the grass, you couldn't play. It was like a complete catastrophe. Now, the Canadians, instead of like sulking and kind of going into their rooms of the hotel and maybe drinking too much sake, instead, what did they do? They volunteered for the next 2 days to help clean up the city in which that they were located. That's what playing for meaning is about. As a leader, we need to ask ourselves a few questions. First of all, why am I here as a leader? Is it just to make money? Is it just for the title? Is there something more that I'm here for? Number 2 is, who am I serving? Is it just the profit people? Or maybe it's like society, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the planet, maybe it's the community, maybe it's my team. Whom am I serving? What's the real answer to that question? And maybe the most important question is, how do I want to be known by people when I leave a room? I.e., when I'm in the room, am I an idiot? Am I a bully? Do I not care about people? Is it always about me? Or am I open, collaborative, concerned, kind, gentle, thinking about others? When we are playing for meaning, we are full of purpose. When we're full of purpose, our team members feel that purpose, and what do? They reciprocate. So far, we're going to be relatable, we're going to be a human being, and we are going to play for meaning, i.e., we're going to ultimately push for a sense of purpose in all that we do. So what's lesson number 3? Well, I call it stay present. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you a story. Now, my wife and I, Denise, are raising 3 children. They're now teenagers, And in January, we're allowed to play soccer. I took a photo of a woman here in Victoria playing soccer. There's my daughter over here. And it was raining, but she had shown up and she kind of unfolded this like tent for one. It was kind of amazing, actually, when you took a look at this. It was like, wow, that was amazing. I didn't know they made tents for one. So she was protected from the rain. I just had my umbrella, so I was kind of getting wet. But for the whole game, for the whole match, for the 70 minutes, 2 35-minute halves, this little arrow I've got pointing, yeah, guess what she's doing? She's holding onto her phone and staring at it for the entire time. And it made me think about how, as leaders, what we're doing with our team. Are we paying attention, eyes to people? Or are we distracted? Are we there for our team members, or are we somewhere else, not paying attention? In the Netherlands, for example, they have red, amber, green lights on the sidewalks so that people don't stare at their phone and then walk into traffic. I know, it's crazy. Some of you might have seen this, right? Outside of Shanghai, texting lanes. I mean, really? So the question that I have for you is, are we overloaded as leaders? Does it feel like this? It's like boom, 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 boom. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So let me give you a metaphor. People often say, oh, I feel like a hamster in a hamster wheel. Well, what if there were 2 hamsters in a hamster wheel? What happens? Well, I'm going to show you. It's not pretty. I mean, yeah. Anyway, the hamster wasn't hurt, but that's how many of us are feeling as leaders. So how do we stay present as a leader? Well, first of all, I urge you to basically have a reality check. I want you to look at your calendar. I want you to be honest with yourself and say, what am I doing? Do I have any time for people? Do I have back-to-back meetings? Do I have any time to plan, to think, to be kind? Or is it like nuts? Is it crazy? Is it like out of control? So then I want you to do a time audit. I want you to look at your calendar and say, all right, how much time am I spending in meetings? How much time am I spending being focused? How much time am I spending on my team? How much time am I spending on myself? Like just, regenerating. Or am I like on all the time? Do I have focus blocks in my calendar that I'm not in a meeting where it's like, for me, it's like, oh, I can think. This is good. I'm not being bugged by anyone. And then as a leader, ultimately, you're doing the same thing. You're asking your team about their reality check. You're asking them about their time and doing an audit. And you're asking them to put focus blocks in their calendar so they're not stressed out. And then as a team, you do something that I call team norms. You set up the right cadence for meetings, how long they should be, what type of email and cadence is appropriate, the response time. If you're not having team norms conversations, I assure you, everybody is not present. They're everywhere. It's like, it's a carnival of distraction. So don't be that. Be present. Stay present for you and your team. Lesson number 4 is called Remain Curious. So this is a story from the south of the United States. This is a woman, her name is Alice Coachman. As a very young child, depicted by these graphics, she was very interested in the high jump. But because of segregation, she wasn't allowed to do the high jump with all these kids who were white at the white schools. So what did she do? She was very curious about being a high jumper. So she cobbled together like sticks and milk crates and rope, and she was barefoot, and she learned to do the high jump because she was curious about where she might go with her talent. Eventually, she became the first Black woman on the planet to win a gold medal at the Olympics in the high jump in 1948 in London. Kind of like India's javelin thrower, right? That curiosity allows him to get Chopra to get the first gold medal in track and field for India. What if they're not curious? What happens? So how do we remain curious? Well, I've got a suggestion. Being a former chief learning officer, I employed this many times over with teams. And the first is you lead off with learning. You lead off a meeting. You lead off a month. You lead off a year. You lead off a report. You lead off a one-on-one coaching session with some sort of learning nugget. How can we learn from each other? Number one. Number two is you engage with other people. Now, I don't care if you're an extrovert, an ambivert, an introvert. None of that makes sense to me. I don't care. What I care about is that you, as a leader, are engaging with other people to build your network because we learn through other people. And as a leader, you are nurturing your team to go build relationships with others outside of your team so they learn from others. That's engage. Number three is adapt. If we don't adapt to a moment, we don't learn. So we cannot have tunnel vision. We need to be open to the change, which we'll come back to. So part of being curious is to adapt to the moment. Number four is to reinforce. So when you learn something, if you're a leader or an individual team member, if you don't take what the learning is and put it into a daily practice, goodbye learning. It's gone. You can't remain curious if you're not reinforcing the learning because it just goes right out. So we must learn something and reinforce it into our behavior so it becomes a new behavior. So it becomes a habit. That's the key word. And then lastly, nurture. What does that mean? Nurture means I want you to nurture what you learn through somebody else. That means you might be a leader who has a lunch and learn, who takes your knowledge and shares it, whether you're a mentor, a coach, whatever. And you want to nurture your learning to somebody else. Because when you nurture something to someone else, it is proven psychologically that it becomes ingrained in you. When you teach somebody else something, you actually improve your own ability and competence level to retain it. And guess what? Here's the trick. Are you ready? Watch this. It's magic. These 5 steps spell the word learn. It's an acronym. Lead off, engage, adapt, reinforce, nurture. To learn, to stay and remain curious, we must learn. And we must do these 5 steps individually and as leaders to help our team. So that's number 4. Number 5 is called embrace change. So it's a little bit like remain curious. It's like the twin sister. So here's a story. Now, during the pandemic, Burger King was looking at its marketing budget, and it said to itself, you know what? Yeah, we could always just do some more marketing for Burger King, but what if we did this during a pandemic? What if we told everyone to order from McDonald's? Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait a second, Burger King is Burger King, and you're telling me they use their marketing dollars to order from McDonald's? Is this what they did? They did. Can you believe this? I mean, it's nuts. But that's the point. When you embrace change, you look at other options than what you've always been doing. And so Burger King had been obviously marketing themselves. And they took a little slice of their budget and they said, hey, maybe we can do this differently for the pandemic. And they did. They said, order from McDonald's. And they basically go on here to say, getting a Whopper, the Burger King burger, getting a Whopper is always best, but ordering a Big Mac is also not such a bad thing. I mean, come on. If they're doing this, I mean, can't we embrace change? But why don't we embrace change? Because people fear mistakes. They're like, oh my God, I can't change. This is a huge mistake. I'm not going to do this. People are going to freak out. They're like, we can't change because people are going to go nuts here. Like, why would we change? And then change is different for different people, right? And so like, well, they're not going to want to do this, so we better not do it. I say this to you folks, balderdash. That's nuts. Like, we need to, as leaders, embrace change if we want to be caring in the way in which that we're operating. I know it sounds crazy, but that works. I mean, trust me on this one. So what do we need to do? Well, to embrace change, as you're going through something as a leader, you need to keep it very light for the team. That means that, you know what, it's going to be rough, but it's okay. I'm going to help you get through this. We're going to learn through this. You know what, I'm going to lose a bit of humor. That's fine. When you share your change mistakes from the past or things you might have done wrong, they look at you and they say, oh, look, she's human or he's human. That's amazing. So it's not such a bad thing. Again, mistakes are okay, right? I mean, we don't encourage them, but if they happen, I'm not going to get fired or terminated, right? And then this thing, this word listen is actually an anagram. That means all the letters are jumbled up to mean silent. Go ahead, check it out. Flip them around. Look at listen. You can make the word silent. So during the change, you need to listen to how the change is going for people. Be silent and just appreciate where they're coming from. That is a caring leader during the embrace change. Number 6 of 9 is called dare to share. So this looks like the apocalypse. I know. Hold on. But the story is this. The Deepwater Horizon oil rig disaster in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago, just outside of Florida and down from, Louisiana, was a tragedy. I mean, 9 people died, but here's the deal. The reason 9 people died during this tragedy and billions of, gallons of oil were spilled into the Gulf of Mexico was because 3 companies who were supposed to be working together did not share. So when you're not sharing information with someone or another team or another company, what happens? Well, this is a metaphor. In this case, people died. So our job as leaders is always to accompany our leadership behavior with this leadership trick. Do you dare to share? Otherwise, if we're not sharing, we're hoarding and we're keeping information to ourselves. That is not good. That is not good, people. It's not caring. So what can you do to dare to share? Well, it's another thing I picked up over the years, so it's a little, I guess, helpful trick from me to you. And it's very simple. I call it up, down, and around. So as a leader, helping your team members see up, what does that mean? What do I have that must be shared with others on my team? So up, I've got information here. I need to share it up with my team members. Then we have to remember that we can't rely on everybody all the time. So we need to go around the team, maybe even the organization, other business units or teams, and say, what do I need to pull down for me? So now you're bringing information down. So we've got up and we've got down. And then the third one is around. That's now you looking around other teams, other parts of the organization, and you say, I think that they need this. And I'm going to be the good citizen. I'm going to be the good employee, the good leader, because I've got information that I know that team over there needs. I might be in IT, but the salespeople over there, I think they need this information. So I'm going to be the good citizen, and I'm going to do this. That is dare to share. When an organization has its dare to share quotient very high, like way up here, you don't get deep water issues. What you get is high performance, and yeah, that same word, a caring organization who's looking out for one another. Up, down, around. Do it. Number 7 is something I call command clarity. What does it mean? Well, here on the screen, you have a goldfish pretending to be a shark, and you have a shark in Greta Thunberg. You might have heard of her. She's trying to save the planet. Now, when a leader commands clarity, they're not pretending to be someone else. They are very clear on where we're going as a team. They remind people of the mission, and they help them along the way see the gaps. That is actually a caring leader. Greta is a pretty good personification of what I'm getting at. Now, she's clear, she reminds you, and she helps you fill in the gaps. So what would you rather be ultimately as a leader? The team member who looks at you and says, oh my gosh, they don't know what they are. They don't tell us information. They're not on time. We have no idea where we're going. Are we a goldfish? Are we a shark? Come on, Dan. What are you doing? Or Greta Thunberg. people, the planet is burning. We need to do something about this like now. And here's the reasons, and here's why, and here's how to do it. I'm going with Greta on this one. I'm going to want to, command clarity as a leader. And so you as a leader, to be a command clarity leader, need to be transparent. That doesn't mean giving away all the confidential information, but it's being transparent so that people understand where you're going, when you're going, and you need to be a very timely type of leader in which to do that. Don't hold on to information. Don't make decisions that take too long. Be decisive. The command clarity leader doesn't sort of cower, doesn't hide behind their office, doesn't hide behind email, doesn't wait. They are clear. And when you're clear, everybody on the team says, whew, I know what I'm doing. Thank you, Dan. This is okay. I'm going to go perform now. And that's the magic of how to be a command clarity leader. Number 7. Now, number 8 is what I call commit to balance. So what do I basically mean here? Well, leaders, I find, are imbalanced in their thinking because they're quite myopic. So they get one view, and they're like, I need to make all of this money right now, or I need to focus on all of these projects right now. And it's, some people call it horse blinders. You've seen horses with the horse blinders where it's like this? Yeah. When you're balanced, when you commit to balance, you're looking at all sorts of opportunities. So for example, what is your kind of diversifying plan of your people, your team, how you diversify projects, how you figure out how there is balance in what you're doing as a team and who is doing what? Similarly, you look at ways in which to include others so you don't have favorites. You don't have cliques. As a leader, you're looking around and saying, how do I bring balance to the scope so that others are having a turn on this particular opportunity, this project, this task? And yeah, you are balancing recognition, i.e., when you are in the moment of a process, a project, something that has to be done, and you're looking around, you're saying, am I balanced in the recognition of the team? Can I recognize everyone at different points during the year or the project? Because what happens is leaders tend to get basically favorites. And when you have favorites, it creates an imbalance. And when you have an imbalance, you don't have a high-performing team. You just have a couple high performers. And you need more than a couple high performers. You need a team of high performers. So when you are diversifying in your headspace and kind of the projects and the opportunities, when you're much more inclusive and when you recognize all, again, this is one of those trust me moments. When you do that, you're going to get a much higher productivity and high performing team. I'll give you an example. Nelson Mandela. So when Nelson Mandela was put on Robben Island, incarcerated there for about 27 years, one of the first things that he did was he looked around at all the inmates, his soon-to-be friends, and he realized that everybody there had something to offer. And so he, Nelson Mandela, started up a university in jail, and he called it Struggle University. And inside of Robben Island, inside of that university, he encouraged everybody to teach something to everyone else. And he created a full-on kind of calendar and curriculum and schedule so that the inmates were teaching other inmates. And that could be anything from history to geography to politics to whatever, maths. Now imagine that, like that kind of recognition and diversifying and recognition of other strategy for you as a leader, kind of symbolic and paying homage to the great Nelson Mandela. Okay, wrapping up here, number 9, the final lesson of 9 is what I call champion others. So I'll tell you a tennis story, and then I'll tell you a Microsoft story. So this on this screen here is probably and arguably the greatest tennis player ever in Serena Williams. And in this particular case, in the summer of 2019, in a tournament in Canada. She was playing Bianca Andreescu, and it was the final of a championship tournament. And during the first game, Andreescu is up 3-1, or first set, 3-1, and now it's the break, and so they're getting their water, and the umpire on the microphone says, "Match abandoned, Williams," and everyone's like, "What?" And so Andreescu won the entire tournament and became the first Canadian champion in like 50 years. Now, instead of Andreescu running into the middle of the court and saying, "Woohoo!" the first thing she did was she championed others. She ran over to Williams' seat. She kind of knelt down, like on her knees. She bowed down and she said this. She says, "Oh my God, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?" She had just become the Canadian champion, and she said, "Can I help you?" That's how we champion others. The Microsoft story is pretty funny because this is a chatbot called Tay. Now, Tay was unleashed on Twitter one day, and Tay lasted 24 hours. Now, this artificial chatbot, the team worked like 7 or 8 months on it, and it was a collective effort, a couple cities, different employees, right? And because Tay lasted 24 hours, it was because, that Tay became a misogynist, denied the Holocaust, became a Nazi supporter, and Microsoft was completely embarrassed. They're like, we have to pull this thing. And they did. They're like, that's it, we're done. No more Tay. 24 hours. Imagine the embarrassment, right? Now, somebody came out and said, "Keep pushing and know that I am with you. The key is to keep learning and improving." And then that same individual went on CNN and some other media and said basically this: "It's so critical for leaders not to freak people out, but to give them air cover to solve the real problem. If people are doing things out of fear, it's hard or impossible to actually drive any innovation." And that whole thing was who? Yeah, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, came to the defense of people who embarrassed the company. That is championing others. That is what I'm getting at. So what do you got to do? Well, you have to be real. You have to remember that there are human feelings going on. And like Satya, you've got to be real in how you lead. You have to remember it's not about you, it's about us. And us is much better than me. And finally, kind of metaphorically, we have to hold the door. You know, when we used to hold doors for people when there wasn't a pandemic? Well, we need to actually hold the door again. When we hold the door, we are championing others. We are looking out for people. That's our duty as leaders. Now, I don't know how much you know of me, but I'm a huge Manchester United supporter. So those of you that don't like Manchester United, I guess you're going to leave now. But here's a story about the pandemic and one of their strikers, wingers, Marcus Rashford. Now, Marcus Rashford, when he grew up, was poor. And so he got to eat lunch and breakfast while going to school because they had this lunch program in the United Kingdom. Now, as the pandemic hit, Marcus Rashford looked around and said, "Oh my gosh, all these kids are at home. They're probably starving." And so he rallied the government and begged them essentially to kind of reopen the schools, at least to open up the kitchens so these kids could eat. And he was just thinking about the kids and the kids and the kids. And finally, the government did. And they opened up the schools so that the kitchens were open so the kids across the United Kingdom could eat. And it was all Marcus Rashford pushing for this because he remembered what it was like to be poor and to not have any food as a kid. Now that's a good story, I think, right? But then this kid, Jack, age 7, writes him a letter and says, "Dear Marcus, I love all the work you're doing. You make me want to help others and be a better person. Because of you, we will donate more food to the food banks and donate our toys to charity." When we champion others, we can inspire. We can ultimately change the game, both figuratively and actually. So one final story before we wrap up here, and I want to tell you a story about New Orleans in the US. And why is that? Well, because when I was thinking about writing this last book, I went to New Orleans to be inspired. And one night I'm walking down, the French Quarter, and I stumble upon the House of Blues. I walk into the House of Blues, and these two gentlemen are playing. And this guy on the left, last song of the night, says, this one's for my wife. And they launch into the very famous song called Stand By Me. Beautiful song. They pack up, they leave. About 10 minutes later, the guy with the hat kind of comes over to my table and says, hey, I was looking at you all night. Thanks for coming to our show. And I said, holy smokes. And then he said, wasn't my son great? I was like, well, I didn't know he was your son, but yeah. And then he said this. He says, tonight was the first night we played since my wife passed away. I thought we were pretty good. And I gave him a hug, and he left. And I thought to myself, that is one caring individual, playing with his son, paying homage to his wife, going back to work, and caring. And so wherever you are in the world today, I urge you to lead, care, win. These 9 kind of behaviors, these lessons, I know they can help because I've seen them in action. And I hope they can help you. I'll put it in summary here. Here in Canada, we get some snow. When the UPS driver looked at a FedEx driver stuck in the snow, he hitched up his wagon and pulled him out of the ditch. That's what I'm talking about. And if that's not clear enough, how about this? A young student writing a math test said, if you could, can you please give my bonus points to whomever scores the lowest? That's the type of care I want to see in you as a leader of today, in a pandemic and after the pandemic. And with that, I thank you so much for tuning in from wherever you are around the world. I think at this point now, I will pass things over to PK and see if there are any questions, concerns, or comments.
Yeah, Dan, thank you so much for the session. I'm not sure, PK, can you see the questions? I can see some of the questions. PK.
No, I can't see the questions. Sunil, you can take these questions, and
Okay.
No
I just
problem.
can't see.
No problem. Okay, quickly, I'll take a few questions and we'll take a quick poll. Or if let's do a quick poll now and then take the questions. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Okay, Neha, if you can quickly launch a poll. So we saw the 9 critical skills that Dan was talking about, and this is the content of one of the flagship programs that we are bringing to India. And the initial portions of this program would be exciting. It would be addressed by Dan himself initially. We're also trying to get him to personally sign the book and to give it to the initial set of participants. So exciting stuff happening. But just I got a lot of people saying they want to know more details. So if you could probably select one of those poll questions quickly, then we can. I got 40% people have voted. That's great. If you can quickly put in your interest, we can share you specific details if you want from the sales team. If you're looking at leadership, you're looking at assessments, because Dan talked about a lot of critical skills. So it's also good to understand where we stand as of now from the team members' perspective and what needs to be focused on. We can't focus on all of the 9 stuff at the same time. So I think it's interesting to have an assessment and benchmarking done based on the years of experience from the leadership point of view. I have close to 70% voted. Just give your try, guys. Just put in one of the tick boxes and quickly we move on to the questions. Anybody who has questions, please put in the question panel, not on the chat, but on the question panel. I have collated a few already. If you can put in the next 30 seconds, we can take it up. Okay, Dan, so while the poll is going on, We will stop it in about a few seconds. Dan, one of the questions that came in multiple times, one of the entry was, whom do I serve? I think this was a very good concept, critical, but a lot of people are saying, can you give us a few more examples and maybe just elaborate on how critical is whom do I serve?
Well, I've been very influenced, I must say, Sunil, by one of your countrymen, Vineet Nair. And Vineet, if you're unfamiliar, Nair ran HCL Technologies for a while and came up with a book called Employees First, Customers Second. And in that book, you know, one of the things he really espouses, of course, is the point of the title of the book. When you inspire and motivate and serve your team members, they're going to do good things for the customer. And so, although, I mean, I look at it slightly differently, but I do agree with Vineet in the sense of whom do I serve? And I think what we have to look at is that you don't just serve the customer, you don't just serve profit. They're very important. Now, I don't have an order like Vineet does, but he's very good at saying employees first. What I say is there's a pie, and you think about a pie graph, you must serve your team member. You must serve the community. You must serve the planet. You must serve your partners. You must serve your customer. And in cases where you are publicly traded or you know, in terms of some sort of revenue share, you must serve the shareholders or the profit seekers. And so that's okay. But when you are just focused on one, like the customer, one, like the shareholder, it's just wrong, because what happens is the other stakeholders look around and say, they're not caring about us. And I've seen it all too often, Sunil, that can become quite problematic. So as a leader, to play for meaning, the meaning of purpose is that we do serve all stakeholders, not just one.
Dan, so much, Dan. I have a few more questions and we are running out of time, but I'll take a couple of them and we will probably respond later.
Sure.
What is mentioning is, what I'm saying is, what kind of leadership strategy do we need to take when there is a multicultural environment, right, in our organization? So how do we
Yeah.
manage that? Is there some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, any organization that's MNC or multinational corporation is a culture of cultures. So you must have still like a nucleus, a systemic kind of bridge that allows everyone to speak the same language, to equivocate the right values or the same values. But there's going to be certain ways that things are done differently in India as they're done in Argentina, as they're done in the United Kingdom. That's okay. But in order for the organization that's multinational to operate together, you do have to have a common core set of values, of behaviors, of purpose, etc. And if that's not the case, then what you have is the silos of countries and silos of cities even not operating together. So it's core nucleus, and it's okay to have culture of cultures if everyone knows when and how to work and collaborate together as a global organization.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I will take one last one. I have lots of them here, so probably we will do that. One quick question. Again, I see multiple. What to share and what not to share? How do you decide that as a leader?
Well,
How
I
much
mean,
is
the one thing that, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And again, it can be very specific, but I often say, you know, you as a leader are going to be the arbiter or the referee of what is confidential and what must stay private versus what should be shared openly and transparently with the team. I mean, you're the boss. So at the end of the day, if you're hoarding everything, I mean, that's horrible strategy. If you're giving away everything,
Can you?
that's a horrible strategy. So there's a balance that needs to happen. And when you figure out the right balance, then the team understands. And when you're more open about what you can share and what you can't, again, then the team says, oh, thank God, I know what's happening now. I get it. He or she can't share that with me. I understand, but at least they know, and you're being proactive about it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dan. I have one last one. It's very interesting. It's from a young leader. It says, as a 22-year with very little experience, how can people with that experience lead people who have been in the industry for, let's say, 15 to 20 years? How do you gain that respect and have them to agree with your ideas? Any
Yeah, I
thoughts?
mean, what a wonderful question. And I mean, I'll say this: I was in those shoes. I was a very young leader of a very large team at a very young age, right at the age of 24, similar to the question asker there. And I had people age 60, 50, 40, decades older than me. And one of my own personal strategies was ultimately to not only listen, but to involve them in what the team kind of culture and decision making and collaboration strategy ought to be. Because when any leader, whether you're 22 or 92, invokes the it's my way or the highway, when they invoke command and control, when they think they have all the right answers, you're not going to be a very successful leader, period. Doesn't matter if you're 22 or 92. So the more you openly involve and gain trust and get their ideas on the table, honestly, Sunil, the better off everyone will be in the end.
Thank you, Dan. As I said, I have another 20 questions, but we won't have time for that. I will collate it for you, Dan, if you get time.
Sure,
We can
no
respond to
problem.
that a
Happy
bit
to.
later when you want. I'll quickly then hand it over to Pankaj. Pankaj, a quick word of thanks from you to close.
Thanks, Sunil. Can you hear me, Sunil? Well,
Perfect.
Absolutely.
great. Thanks a lot, Dan. This is a very engaging webinar, and I think I really appreciated the stories which you narrated. And one story in particular that really touched my heart was a Dan Smith story when he died and then he gave the $200 checks to the people whom he coached. I think that's a very, very inspiring story, Dan. So these 9 areas are the key to the secret sauce for any person who wants to be a leader, and whether it's personal or professional life. Thanks all of the people who attended this, took time out, especially in the first half of the day. And on behalf of Tal Success and Quint team, I thank everyone for attending this webinar. Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Dan, and thanks all Quint members. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dan. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks.